If you've just tuned in, it's time for another episode of AI Africa, your antenna in tech on the continent, with me, Kiamakgetso Mosepele. In this week's segment, we take a look at an operator of one of the largest integrated space and terrestrial networks in the world, Intelsat, on some of their latest innovations in providing digital access to Africa. As always, you can let us know what you think on X using the hashtag AI Africa. But first up, we have Chanel AI with your latest news updates on what's happening in the world of AI. Over to you, Chanel AI.
Thanks, Kiamo. And here's a wrap of what's trending in AI. Biden and Xi Jinping deal to regulate AI systems for nuclear weapons. In global news, US President Joe Biden and Chinese head of state, Xi Jinping, have cautioned the use of artificial intelligence in military or nuclear operations, citing risk issues. The leaders of two of the world's leading economies spoke on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperative Conference on Wednesday. Earlier reports from Hong Kong-based English-language newspaper, the South China Morning Post stated that the world leaders are set to sign a deal limiting the use of artificial intelligence in nuclear weapon control systems and have agreed to establish intergovernmental dialogue on AI, cooperate on counter-narcotics and resume high-level military dialogue on the basis of equity. Nigeria to use AI to strengthen national security. And in news on the continent, Nigeria's Air Force announced on Monday that it will explore using AI and other emerging technologies to combat terrorism and other security threats in the country. The announcement came this week at the Communications Information Systems (CIS) conference at its headquarters in the capital, Abuja, to map the way forward against terror and other forms of violent crime. Air Staff Chief and Marshal Hassan Abubakar says the power of technology would determine the Air Force's operational effectiveness and efficiency. That's all from me, Chanel AI. You're up to date. Over to you, Kiamo.
Now that you know what's trending in AI, it's time to know what is trending in satellite technology and connectivity in the continent. As of June 2022, this multinational satellite operator operated a fleet of 52 communication satellites across the world. And according to a recent deal signed by Africa Mobile Services Networks, this operator services 8 million Africans, with many more on the horizon. I am pleased to be joined by Rhys Morgan, VP and General Manager, EMEA Media and Networks. How is your organization helping to develop Africa's access to internet in a sustainable way?
So satellite indeed has been a legacy technology, but what we see is that satellite is becoming increasingly more relevant once again to the market. If we focus on sub-Saharan Africa, our ability to extend people's networks into hard-to-reach places or provide overlay capacity, or indeed some more resilience, is incredibly important. We're obviously working with the latest technologies to try and improve, enhance, and extend our offer. But we're also working very hard in all of the markets across the continent to deliver appropriate services. For example, in South Africa, that at the moment is unfortunately experiencing some fairly severe load shedding, we're working with one of our partners, Liquid Technologies, to develop a solution to keep businesses, small and large, connected, even when the power is out. It's just one example of how we're working with businesses to make sure that we remain relevant and they remain trading.
Now, speaking to Sub-Saharan Africa's potential for growth is projected to be one of the fastest growing globally, sustaining growth in the telecoms industry. Now, taking this into consideration, what will it require for Africa to move past legacy network systems and towards the widespread use of locally developed technology?
I think there are a number of different factors there, and I think the local element is something that's absolutely fundamental. So one of our key pillars, if you like, in terms of the way that we work is that we develop solutions in country with local partners. We put infrastructure on the ground, and we don't try and develop a one-size-fits-all solution for the continent. There are many, many different dynamics and variables, and the demands also reflect those differences. So you need to be very sensitive to the needs of the local markets. And you need to work within those markets with people who are present there to develop something that is relevant. Capacity building in terms of human resources and competence is also important for us. So through, for example, our Max IQ STEM scholarship program, we're trying to seed interest in the space business, but also develop some talents out there so that across the continent, there are people who understand that the space sector is both relevant, but also accessible. And that's really very important for us, not only as a business, but also in our sort of core mission to connect people in a ubiquitous nature. So we need those skills and that interest on the ground. And those skills and interests will then in turn start to develop their own technologies, businesses, and commercial approaches to using satellites to provide more connectivity, whether it's for AI, simple data connectivity, or a whole host of applications that are supported when you've got good access to the internet.
Now, I like that you've touched on human resources and skills transfer. What role does internet access from the work you're doing aid in how Africa's youth are participating and innovating in the digital economy, as well as what is the role or space that satellites fill in this greater picture?
Okay, so the simple spread of, well, since in some cases not so simple spread of telecommunications networks obviously gives people more access to information, and people can access the type of information that interests them. And obviously, many educational providers seek to put their content, their courses, their offerings into that space, and people exploit that. But equally, in certain cases, we take a more direct approach. So we work, for example, with the University of Stellenbosch here in South Africa, where I am today, and we provide a distance learning package with them that's delivered via satellite. We work with the charity Mindset as well to deliver health and educational content, again via satellite. And then we work with operators such as AMN, who are delivering solutions into very, very small population centers, sometimes as small as 1,000 people, bringing those people online. That gives them access to mobile banking, gives them access to security services and others, but also then it enables people to understand perhaps more fully, collect data about what's going on in those villages, and then possibly start provisioning things such as healthcare or more facilities for people to enhance their sort of day-to-day life. So connectivity can really bring a host of advantages. And again, I'll go back to the sort of local angle. What we need to do is make sure that we're delivering the right type of connectivity, both functionally and economically, so that people can make the most of it and it therefore derive the most advantage from it.
In which specific regions are you seeing the greatest need for satellite technology on the continent, as well as how you're investing in it and what kind of economic impact can be made?
So the needs are very diverse. So if we look at South Africa, and I touched on our load shedding backup service that we've just launched this week with Liquid Telecoms. If I look, for example, slightly further north into DRC, massive demand across the country, connecting more mobile base stations, delivering internet, backing up fiber. And then if we go up into West Africa, huge demand for connecting some of the massive countries that are up there, Niger, Mali, and others. And that's connecting lots of the towns and cities that are spread across the country. We've got a lot of enterprise connectivity. So businesses are either looking for more resilient connectivity, or indeed they're looking for connectivity within the country itself. So, for example, a bank will want to connect to its regional branches, and they'll want to do that with services that remain in the country for a number of different reasons. So data sovereignty is important, as is security. And so those are driving demand. And then if we move to the east, there are very diverse economies and nation states there, and they've got different demands. So Ethiopia is clearly a very large market, very interesting for us. We've been present there for many decades. Kenya, again, where we have a large media business. I think, if I look across the continent, what I see is a range of services, customers, and needs that really reflect our business globally. So some extremely large players, some medium-sized customers, and then a lot of very small customers as well, who are either managing a business that has a very specific niche, or indeed are starting out on their path to growth. So extremely exciting continent for us. We've been here for many, many decades, since the late 60s. It's really important for us strategically. And, with our 3 offices and sort of tens of personnel spread across the different offices and different countries, we feel we're well placed to assist people with their growth needs.
Now, given the demand overview you've given over the African continent, would you say Africa is competitive when it comes to operating in satellite technology? And can you also outline some of the cost implications as a result?
Sure. So I think historically Africa's suffered a little bit because people have tended to bring a sort of one-size-fits-all solution into the continent, or they've developed something that has worked in another part of the world and kind of decided that this could be applicable for the markets. So what we thought long and hard over the last sort of 10 years or so during our own transformation as a business, and we've looked to really try and reduce the total cost of ownership, and that could be designing networks in a different way, using different equipment, but equally storing equipment in countries where we do a lot of business. So, for example, in the DRC, we have warehousing facilities, and we're ready to roll with equipment and people whenever our customers need that. So, really focusing on the key markets and making sure that we've got the right price points, which again driven by technology in terms of network design, but also technology in terms of equipment. But then also in many cases, engineering and designing something that is fit for the local market. It may be that, for example, lower data rates are needed in certain areas. So if I go back to the very small populations that our partner AMN covers, they don't need hundreds of megabytes at the moment going into those villages. And so making sure that the design is totally appropriate for the need that it's trying to serve. And I think that level of customization and localization, sadly, is missing all too often when people are trying to deliver services into the continent. And I think the final pillar for us really is about having people across the continent who are from the countries where we work, fully understand the local market, and we're trying to not service key markets from afar. We want to be in there, present, involved, and understanding fully what's going on, both with our partners, but also directly. And that's really fundamental for us.
Now, earlier you touched on load shedding. In a market where majority of your potential users are facing energy poverty, does satellite tech still play a pivotal role in tech adoption? And how are you navigating the energy question in Africa?
Okay, so energy and access to energy, whether it's no grid access or access to an unstable grid, or unfortunately, as we see in South Africa, access to a grid that has some of its own delivery challenges, has been something that we've been dealing with for a long, long time. So solar power is extremely important. We can pull together low power solutions that can be solar powered. So whether that's a mobile base station, for example, which our partners at AMN have pioneered, whether it's backups that are solar powered, and then it's also our ability as a satellite operator to be able to skip elements of the local network, for example. So in South Africa, what we see is that, for example, base stations may not, their backup generators may not come on, or they become very overloaded if they're in an area where there is load shedding. And so it enables us to skip some of those pinch points within the local network. But power is fundamental for a lot of communications. And equally, that extends to people being able to charge and manage their devices as well. So that's something that, again, we've looked at with partners. And access to power, along with access to water and other sort of essential utilities, is really something that we try and work with, and we try and develop solutions that cater for some of the challenges that exist in certain markets.
And that's where we park our conversation for today. Many thanks to you for joining us. That was Rhys Morgan, VP and General Manager, EMEA Media and Networks, for another episode of AI Africa. And that's how we wrap up today's episode. You can catch us next week, Friday, right here on CNBC Africa.